Call to order the Brentwood Board of Aldermen meeting for September 5th of 2017. If you'd all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a roll call, please.
Alderman Dimmitt.
Here.
Alderman Kramer. Alderman Leahy.
I'm here.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Here.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Weggie.
Here.
Mayor Thornton.
Here. Item number 3 on the agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. Before we move to approve that, I'd like to point out for the board, we discovered some typos in Bill 6150, and we have a 6150.1 that should be a part of your packet or at your desk here. Also, there's a typo in the minutes of the last meeting that's been corrected, and corrected versions are at your desk. So I think that's it with those. Other than those, are there any additions or changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, any objection to approval by acclamation? Seeing none, it'll be approved by acclamation. Item number 4 on the agenda is approval and consideration of the Board of Aldermen meeting minutes from 21 August. Is there any changes or additions to the minutes? Seeing none, any objection to approval by acclamation?
As amended, or as corrected already.
As corrected. Seeing none, they'll be approved as corrected. Thank you. We have no presentations this evening, no public hearings, and no bids. That brings us to item number 8 on the agenda, a hearing of any matter of public interest upon the request of any person present. If anyone in our audience would care to step forward and address the Board of Aldermen, please do so. State your name, and you'll be given 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Andrea Andrew. I live at 8105 Fawn Avenue. I've been a Brentwood resident for 9 years. I'm currently working on a development project. It's a vacant lot across the street from a lumber yard on Russell Avenue. The development would be multifamily. It would be a low carbon footprint. It would promote sustainability and self-sufficiency. I've read through the Brentwood Comprehensive Plan and the Brentwood Vision Statement, and I feel that this would go quite well with both of those things. It would add a sense of community and a sense of place to an undeveloped area on a very difficult to develop lot, and it would blend in an industrial area with a residential area. And I hope to be invited to talk to you more about this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else care to come forward?
Susan Lee on
You can
Eulalie.
bring that down towards your mouth. There you go.
Susan Lee on Eulalie. I have a question about crossing guards. We don't have, do we, anymore?
Well, I guess we
Brentwood
can answer it
Boulevard?
after you ask. If you want to just kind of lay out your questions, then we can kind of see if we can answer.
We have a great-granddaughter who's now in middle school, and she's walking home and has to cross Brentwood Boulevard. And a couple of times has had a problem. Sometimes the light will change quickly, and then she gets frightened and tries to run across. And I just wondered if we couldn't get a crossing guard at maybe White Avenue or something with the kids coming home from Brentwood, the ones that are walking. And if there's any way that we could get something done, or signage to slow some of the traffic down, too, to let them know that there's children crossing in that area.
I think we had a sign, but it got ran over.
No.
I'm joking.
Okay, well, if anybody could do anything about trying
Sure.
to get some
Sure.
kind of help there, I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone else care to come forward and address the board? Okay, seeing none, do we have aldermanic response? I can actually take the second question. So I do know that we have got an agreement with the school district to have crossing guard on Brentwood Boulevard, and I believe it's at White, if I'm not mistaken.
It is, that's correct.
And so it's in the morning for half an hour and in the afternoon for half an hour, if I'm not mistaken. So if that person is not there, it is either because that person is ill and no replacement was available, or because that person, didn't report to work or what, I mean, that there is a position and there is a person that's supposed to do that. So, and I see our city administrator and our chief of police are powwowing, so I suspect that you'll get an answer to that before the evening's out. So, and I know like I said, that's a joint effort between the city and the school district. I believe the city actually employs the person, but the school district pays the salary. So that's how that works. Any further aldermanic response? Seeing none, item number 9 on the agenda. We don't have any unfinished business, nor do we have any bills to be given a first reading. That brings us to item number 11 in record time. Item number 11A is bill number 6148. Mr. City Attorney, could we have the second reading by title only, please?
Bill number 6148, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance approving a computer-assisted report entry and record analysis and mapping system service agreement with St. Louis County, Missouri.
Thank you. Alderman Kramer is not with us this evening, so I will do my best to emulate his dulcet tones. With this agreement, the City of Brentwood Police will have access to the St. Louis County Police Department's police records management system. This unit will provide 24-hour-a-day telephone entry of police reports, thereby allowing Brentwood police officers the ability to perform exclusive patrol duties. This agreement is renewed annually. The department recommends the Board of Aldermen consider approval of an agreement for computer-assisted entry and record analysis. And that's bill number 6148. The chair would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I'm going to have to ask you to state recommending the approval or adoption.
Make a motion to perfect Bill number 6148 into ordinance form.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board perfect bill number 6148. Is there any discussion from the board? Seeing none, let's have a roll call.
Alderman Demmett.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes.
Alderman Plufka.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Bill number 6148 passes, and upon signature of the mayor, becomes ordinance 4797.
Okay, item 11B is bill number 6150. Mr. City Attorney, can we have the second reading by title only, please?
You want to amend before we have second reading?
Oh, do we need an amendment? I thought it was just a stenographic error, but
Okay.
we could,
It should be amended because we used the term blighted, which had never
oh,
been.
you're right. But
cited by the
didn't we
board.
make that amendment last, I thought we actually made that amendment at the last meeting.
If we did, then
We
don't
did,
need to do it.
yeah.
Bill number 6150 is amended, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance approving an agreement with Navigate Building Solutions LLC for owner representation services for the city of Brentwood.
All right, thank you. Synopsis for the bill is a request for qualification solicitation for owner's representative services associated with the three aforementioned Manchester Road projects was made during July of 2017. Navigate Building Solutions was selected as the most qualified and responsive firm. The Public Works Committee unanimously recommended that the Board of Aldermen consider approval of an agreement for owner's representative services between Navigate and the city of Brentwood. Just so we're all clear, the bill that we're voting on is the bill that had the word blighted stricken from the first paragraph, or second whereas paragraph, if I'm not mistaken.
First.
So I would entertain a motion on that bill.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion to perfect Bill 6150.1 into ordinance form, please.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board perfect bill number 6150.1. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Oh, Alderman Lockmiller.
Would I still be able to ask a question of the city administrator?
Sure.
Madam City Administrator, and maybe the city attorney, I'm looking at page 8 of the contract, under owner's responsibilities. In that first paragraph, it has where it says Navigate does not assume any responsibility for errors and omissions. Does that mean that our only recourse against any, errors or any omissions, or anything a contractor would do would be we'd have to seek damages from the contractor, and Navigate has no responsibility at all?
No, sir. What it says is that they are not they're not architects. Okay, so they are not gonna perform architectural works, design, or construct anything. So what they're saying is they do not assume responsibility for design errors or omissions or work performed by design professionals or contractors.
So our recourse would be against those that do the actual
Yes, sir.
work? Okay.
They will not engage those folks, we engage those professionals
Okay.
and contractors, and it's just clarifying that they're not responsible for the work of others.
All right.
Alderman Plufka.
And I think to build on Alderman Lockmiller's point, the first sentence under claims and disputes indicates that Navigate does hold itself out as being responsible and will indemnify for any errors or omissions that they are responsible for in the completion of their duties pursuant to this contract.
Well, it holds us harmless against claims of others, let alone their
Right.
own liabilities.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
And if I'm not mistaken, just following in that same vein, I'm fairly certain that I heard City Administrator Conde told me that they do have professional liability assurance along those lines.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Demmett,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes?
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Yes.
Alderman Plufka.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Bill number 6150.1 passes, and upon signature of the mayor, becomes ordinance 4798.
All right, thank you. Item 11C is bill number 6152. Mr. City Attorney, could we have that reading, second reading by title only, please?
Bill number 6152, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance amending the zoning map of the city of Brentwood to rezone certain property numbered 8816 Harrison Avenue and 8815 Litzinger Road from B, Single Family Residential District, to PD, Plan Development Overlay District, and establishing the effective date of this ordinance.
Your Honor, I will offer a motion to perfect Bill 6152 into ordinance form, please.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the Board of Aldermen perfect bill number 6152 into ordinance form. For the benefit of the audience, I'll go ahead and read the synopsis, though. The purpose of the rezoning request to PD, Plan Development District, is to accommodate the construction of a new banking facility for West Community Credit Union at 2345 South Brentwood Boulevard. These parcels are required for the development of the project and would need to be rezoned to PD, Plan Development Overlay. The existing residences at 8815 Litzinger Road and 8816 Harrison will be demolished. The parcels are a total of .689 acres in size. The request by West Community Credit Union to rezone the property located at 8816 Harrison and 8815 Litzinger from B, single-family residential, to PD was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission by a vote of 10 ayes and 0 nays. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call, please.
Alderman Demmett,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes?
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Yes.
Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Bill number 6152 passes. Upon signature of the mayor, becomes ordinance 4799.
All right, thank you. Item 11D on the agenda is bill number 6153. Mr. City Attorney, could we have the second reading by title only, please?
Bill number 6153, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance granting site plan approval and a conditional use permit to West Community Credit Union for development of a commercial office building at 2345 South Brentwood Boulevard.
Thank you. Bill number 6153, the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed a petition from West Community Credit Union to operate a drive-through at their proposed new facility to be located at 2345 South Brentwood Boulevard. The new building would consist of 9,965 square feet of office space. The credit union square footage is 4,990 square feet, and there will be up to 3 tenant bays occupying the remaining 4,975 square feet. Since the credit union will include a drive-through, a conditional use will be required for the project. The request by West Community Credit Union for the site plan and architectural elevation review and a conditional use permit to operate a drive-through was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission by a vote of 10 ayes and 0 nays.
Your Honor, I'll make the motion to perfect Bill 6153 into ordinance form.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve Bill number 6153 into ordinance form. Is there any discussion? Alderman Lockmiller.
Your Honor, would I be able to ask a question of our planning and zoning, or planning and development director?
Sure. Director Kirkemeyer.
Just a quick couple of questions, Lisa. On the condition, there's one condition here on hours of operation by tenants,
That's correct.
and I guess you're in charge of overseeing that. How is that condition recorded going forward, many years down the road? Say some guy wants to open an after-hours ice cream parlor. How do we remember that this condition's in place?
Certainly, that's a good question. So as long as all of our existing processes would stay in place, how that would be reviewed currently is any tenants would have to come in and apply for a business license to locate a business here in the city of Brentwood. So part of that process is there's several opportunities for different staff people to sign off on the business license and check for certain things. So one of them would be if the zoning is appropriate for that type of business. And the code deems the planning director as the zoning administrator. So what I do for every business license is I check again what the zoning of the property is, if that business is permitted in that zoning district. And then as well, I also check if there's been a conditional use permit that's also been, that governs that property. So if there is something of a condition that would somehow impact what type of businesses perhaps could be there or their hours of operation, that's when we, let the business know and we would check at that time. So, and then that would also get just recorded on the business license. So, if there was, again, a condition on hours of operation, that would be noted on the license.
And then during construction, I know they're going to be in operation. How is parking going to be handled for business as well as construction parking? Do we know how that's going to be dealt
I
with?
don't know that down to details yet, but as you're all aware of, that was even one reason why the site plan was laid out as it was, because again, the whole idea is that the current existing building would remain in place while the new building's being built. And then they're hoping to always keep the doors open, keep their operations going, and then demolish the existing building. But you're right, there's going to be a period of time, I don't know for how long of a period, where there's not going to be much parking available on site. So we would have to, and we could certainly try to help and facilitate that, but there'll have to be some type of parking arrangements, I imagine, that would have to be entered into between the credit union and some of the neighboring properties or city
I'm just
property.
making sure that they're not parking along Harrison, construction parking and that type of thing.
Right. Now, I mean, we wouldn't want that to impact the neighborhood, and as well as I wouldn't be, I don't think, good for their customers either. I'm sure the customers would rather know there's a designated spot to park during that construction phase. So we'll just have to, and again, the city's here to help. We'll just try to help facilitate that, but I don't know exactly what the parking arrangements would be.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Demmett,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Yes.
Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Bill number 6153 passes, and upon signature of the mayor becomes ordinance 4800.
All right, thank you. Let's see, item number 12 on the agenda. We don't have any bills to be given a first and second reading. We have no resolutions. Accounts against the city. Alderman Dimmitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everyone, you have in front of you the warrant list for September 5th, 2017. In going over this list, I realize there's one item that we do need to remove, or I would propose that we remove. and that's the very last one in the amount of $10,500 due to the fact that certain conditions precedent have not been satisfied. So accordingly, I would make a motion to approve the warrant list as amended in the amount of $59,624.66.
Second, Your Honor.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the warrant list in the amount of 59, what was it, 5960?
624.66.
What he said. Is there any discussion? One note on that. There's no big deal on that one. It's just that apparently the Crosses have had the agreement reviewed by an attorney and they haven't gotten it back yet. So since they haven't signed the agreement and given it back to us, I told Alderman Dimmitt it didn't make much sense for us to approve cutting the check. So that's all that's going on. I'm sure we'll have it back in a couple of weeks. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Alderman Dimmitt?
Yes.
Alderman Leahy?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Yes.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
All right, looks like the bills are paid for another month. Item number 15, reports of committees and department heads. The first one up is me. I'm going to take just a few minutes of your time, and I'm going to ask the aldermen to pay special attention to what I'm about to discuss, because I think it's going to be on our agenda next meeting, and I think it's an item that's of some importance generally to the future of not only Brentwood, but also a number of our neighboring cities. I don't know if how many of you had a chance to read the article in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch regarding the Consolidated Fire Command. It was on September 2nd. I think it was in Tony Messenger's column. And, the column was largely, written by Kurt Becker, from what I could tell. And Kurt is a firefighter over in Clayton. He's also the representative of the local union. And, Kurt stated a couple of things in that article that I believe are not true, first of all. And the first thing that I think is not true is that the effort to do the Consolidated Fire Command is dead. I do not believe that's true. I believe that Rock Hill has dropped out. I believe that Rock Hill dropped out solely for financial reasons, and I believe that based on what I know of their finances and my discussions with Mayor Mann. I think that they very much wanted to be a part of it. And I think Mayor Mann tried to convince his board to stretch the budget and make them a part of it. But I think his board felt that they were committed far enough already and that they weren't ready to take that step. But as far as I can tell, and from my discussions with the mayors of the other cities involved, Richmond Heights has already approved the agreement.
Yes.
The city of Maplewood is taking it up at their next meeting, which is in about 2 weeks, a week. And the city of Clayton will be taking it up very shortly as well. And so, I do not believe that this is a dead issue. I just don't. And I think I think Mr. Becker saying that is a large part his wishful thinking. And I have a great deal of respect for our union, the firefighters local. I think, John Youngblood and the union members do a fantastic job of representing their members. And we've had, he and David Niemeyer and I and others, the members of the union, have had wonderful, very productive discussions about, the firefighting world and how it's changing and so on and so forth. So, I think I say all that to say that I don't have any particular issue with union in general, and certainly not with our firefighters union, who I think has done a wonderful job of representing their members. But I will say this, that I think it's very clear that Mr. Becker would like to see this proposal killed. And I noted in the article a couple of things, and I want to bring them to your attention. Mr. Becker said in that article that he is 100% behind consolidation of the fire departments, right? And in his preferred method for consolidation of the fire departments is a fire district, okay? Now, I don't know how much you all know about how fire districts work, but this is what happens. Fire districts are independent taxing entities, all right, that are set up and answerable to a small board that is elected. It's an elected board, but it's elected from the entire district that it represents. And it's usually a small board, usually 3 or 5 people, something like that, okay? And those seats, special taxing entities are not well understood by the voters, right? So people in this room perhaps all know what a special taxing entity is, and they know that the board of the library trustees that are meeting downstairs are the people that are in charge of the library taxes that you pay every year, right? And they just control how they're spent. If we were to consolidate into a fire district, then there would be a special tax that goes directly to that district, and that tax money would be under the control of 3 to 5 people on a district board. Okay? Now, typically what happens in fire districts is those board seats are occupied by either union representatives or members of the union. Okay? So what happens is that the district then comes under the control of the people, right? The finances of the district come under the control of the people for whom, right, it's comprised. And to me, that's a very dangerous thing. As our city attorney once told me, you know, it makes no sense to have the foxes guard the chicken coop. And not that I think that anybody that's not to say that I think that anybody would do anything dishonest or wrong. I don't think that at all. But I think that Mr. Becker and Mr. Youngblood and others who are part of the union, their job is to represent their members as best they can. And I think if they can put themselves in a position to do better by their members, then they're doing their job, right? But I also think that as the tax-paying citizens, right, that are in need of fire services, right, and want them supplied in the most best and efficient manner, maybe that's not the best situation for us, okay? Maybe it makes more sense to have a consolidated fire command or fire group that is under the watchful eye of Bola Akande, who has to answer to this board when she wants to increase the budget for that particular department. She has to come to us and explain why that department needs more money, right? Maybe it makes more sense to have that group under the control of the voters, right? Under the people who are elected directly by the voters, rather than by some people who are elected by a special taxing district, right? Who have all the incentive in the world to stay out of the limelight and simply take the tax money and use it to the benefit of however they see fit. Now, you know, Mr. Becker in the article surmised that this plan failed because the people involved wanted it to fail. Well, I surmise that Mr. Becker would prefer to see a fire district created because that would benefit him. Now, I don't know that to be true, but I do know how fire districts work, and I do know if you go and look at the data, which I've done as a result of our recent efforts to bring our salaries into line with market forces, I will tell you that every single district, bar one, is paying higher than Brentwood, and we are the highest paying municipality. So that's not proof of anything. but it does indicate to me that perhaps the best thing for the people of Brentwood and the people of the surrounding communities is not to have a fire district that's controlled, whose tax dollars are controlled by a small group of individuals who may have a relationship with the people whom they're working with on that board. So I think the reason that I get a little bit, well, look, Mr. Becker has one point of view, I have another, and that's fine. But I say this because I think that there's one thing that Mr. Becker and I can agree on and do agree on wholeheartedly. And that is, well, actually, there's probably 2 things that he and I would agree on. The first, he stated in the article, and I agree with him 100%, there are efficiencies to be derived from consolidating this area of our public safety effort. There's no doubt about it, right? The fire services, right, there are efficiencies to be gained by consolidating our fire services. Everybody sees it, and so I think, you know, the question is, how do you get there, right? The second thing is, and I don't know if Mr. Becker would agree with this or not, but my feeling is that one way or another they will happen. That municipal governments cannot, you know, we cannot stick our head in the sand and say, hey, we're just going to continue to do things the same way until we can't do it anymore. either by budget forces or by legislative forces or by other, it will happen. Things will change. And my view is that, you're far better to direct the change in a way that makes sense to you and is in the best interest of the voters and the taxpayers than you are to have some people sitting in Jefferson City decide what's the best way to make this happen for us. Because sometimes they don't have the best picture of what goes on right here on the street when we got to talk to the people. They don't have to do that very often, in my opinion. So anyway, so I think it is an important topic. I think it's far from dead at this point, and I would encourage you to do the research, do the homework for next meeting. Come prepared with lots of questions. I encourage you to ask tough questions. I encourage you to ask as many as you like. But I do encourage you to think about two things. One is there are tremendous efficiencies to be gained by coordinating our efforts in this regard. There's no question about it. I don't think that we'll achieve most of those on the first day of operation of any plan, would be it a fire district or a consolidated fire command. But I do think over time those efficiencies will become clear. And the second thing I want you to think about is, I believe very strongly that this change will come in the not too distant future. Whether it is led by us or whether it's thrust upon us, we simply will not be able to maintain the status quo for a long, for a reasonably long period of time. It's just gonna happen. So that if you believe, as I do, that that's the case, then what's the best approach? And how can we best represent our taxpayers and our citizens in that effort? I am not wedded to one, believe it or not, I am not wedded to one solution or another, right? I am interested to hear all of your ideas on the topic, and whether you're voting for the Joint Fire Command or against it, that doesn't bother me. What I want to do is I want to hear some discussion on these points, because I think they're far too important for us to ignore going forward. This is not the type of thing that we can just say, well, we don't want to change. That just won't cut it, right? So if we don't go for this, right, that's not going to be the end of the world, but let's talk about what we are going to do, because that's just as important as what we're not going to do. That's my report. Sorry for I was the longest item on the agenda, I apologize, but there you go. Let's see, I seem to have lost my agenda.
15B.
Yeah, what is that?
Public safety.
Public safety, thank you. Alderman Plufka.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, that's right.
Public Safety Committee will meet on September 21st, 2017, here in this room.
Okay, Public Works, Alderman Lockmill.
Thank you, Your Honor. Our next meeting is Wednesday, September 13th at 4:30 right here. We're going to be opening up a couple of bids. We're going to get into our sewer lateral program, which is a problem.
Freudian slip, right?
Yeah.
Freudian.
As we see in our...
Wait, Alderman Lockmiller. First you ignore the growing market for all-night ice cream, and then...
Oh, a secret you might have. To Alderman Wiggy's delight, we're going to get into dog park discussion a little bit further. Thank you.
I would encourage everyone, Alderman included, to come to the Ways and Means Committee meeting if you can make it. Public Works Committee meeting. Yeah.
You come to
I'm
Ways
looking
and
at the
Means,
next
too.
thing, yeah.
The only committee that matters.
Alderman Dennett would love you to come to Ways and Means.
That's it.
too.
No all-night ice cream. We're done. Director of Planning and Development, Director Kirkemeyer, I understand you have a special use permit request.
So yes, included in your packets prior to the meeting was a request from the Refined Room at 2525 South Brentwood Boulevard. They're requesting under the special use permit section of the code to request temporary storage containers, 4 of them, to be placed at the rear of their lot, the west end of the lot, for inventory storage. And the special use permit had requested that the storage containers be permitted to stay for 48 months. And actually, they were proposing to start sometime here in September. So that's the request before you. As you remember, at the very last meeting, we just had a text amendment that dealt with our storage container section. So it was approved by second reading at the last Board of Aldermen meeting, which did require that any special use permits for temporary storage containers and trailers all come before the Board of Aldermen. So that's why this item is before you this evening.
So, Lisa, I guess before we get too far into this, do you have a recommendation for the board? I mean, I think a lot of the people up here would like to hear what your thoughts are. I mean,
Sure. So Sean, who's actually one of the co-owners here, is actually in the audience tonight too. And we've had several conversations, Sean and I, before he even applied for the special use permit. And one of the questions that he asked was, what's temporary? And is there any limitations to what temporary means or the duration period? So, I mean, there's not. I think it was asked is because it is temporary, that's tied back to the special use permit request individually. So yes, that's the answer. Whatever someone asks for is what we're responding to. So I've talked with Sean even since, the last meeting, and in my mind, 48 months is not really temporary. Again, I don't have an answer to say what temporary is, but, and I think Sean would even say that this has been part of our conversation too, that he really needs permanent storage. So I think that's why the 48 months was requested. I don't see anything in our code that prevented or eliminated his request in any certain way, so it is what it is. But I do think the 48 months is pretty excessive. I don't know enough about storage containers to know if you had a storage container and it was brand new, so to speak, how long do they even last? How long do they look nice? So again, though, the ordinance that we just went ahead and approved at the last meeting does, though, give us some, now some code words to work with, because part of the amendment for last month was also coming up with performance standards, I would call them. So part of what you approved was this new section that said, here's the parameters, here's some standards we're going to look at when these requests come before us. So one of those is obviously it has to be kept well and no rust. And so, I mean, if it is found to ever be a problem from just deterioration or that it's worn, we would ask them to be removed at that time. So that would be cause to ask for the storage containers to be removed. So I guess to answer your question, I think 48 months is permanent. I don't think it's temporary. So I think that is pretty extensive. I don't know if maybe 12 months would work. But again, I think it's going to be something he's going to probably come back with as soon as that period would end. If it was approved, I think there'll be another request to follow. So I think we'll just have to look for other options, maybe for his storage needs. So that's
all
what
right.
I've surmised.
The way
at this
I'd like
point.
to do this is if I could entertain a motion to approve the special use permit as requested.
So
That-
moved, Your Honor.
Second.
All right. Been moved and seconded that the board approve the special use permit as requested. So that puts the matter before the board. Now we can have discussion. Of course, the board is free to make amendments, et cetera, so that just starts the discussion period. I'd also ask the board to please, discussion, you feel free to ask questions, but again, if you're stating opinion or whatever, just state it. Don't drag Lisa into it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This application for special use, I have a number of problems with it, not the least of which is I don't see anywhere in the description as to what the material is made out of, what the actual storage containers are. My second concern is that in this one schematic drawing that we have, the request says it's for 4 containers. There's only 2 that are drawn on the schematic, and if they're 10 by 20, meaning they're 10 foot high and 20 foot square to the other sides, I guess, to the other dimensions, it means you're talking about 80 feet across, and if I'm reading the property correctly, it's a 100-foot wide lot, is that right?
I can't see for sure if it's 100, but actually I would have to say the site plan that they gave us would be fairly accurate, because those parking spaces, I know they're angled, but generally the parking spaces are like 10 by 20. And so I'll call it a diagram, because it's not really a site plan,
Okay.
because you're right, it's not to scale. But
But it only shows 2, and this thing asks for 4.
there would be 4. There would be Two that would be side by side, and then an aisle or row in between, and then two more. So
I see,
this
so they're
was actually
rectangular. So the
Correct.
10 by 20 refers to the width, and I thought the 10 was the height, and the 20 was 20 foot around.
That would be how you'd accumulate the square footage, 10 by 20.
Okay, so it's 4 rectangular containers.
I think two of them side by side makes a square, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. The other thing is, I think our ordinance that was recently passed contemplates at least screening. I count at least 4 or 5 properties visually impacted at the back of their lots, on the north end and at the east end of their lots, residential properties impacted by this. If we're talking about 4 years, I think we're entitled to know what kind of screening is being put up. I mean, certainly if we're talking about temporary storage for 4 years, 4 winters, all of that, that I think we're entitled to see a little better what they intend to do with regard to hiding this thing from the view of the properties that are visually impacted on. Those are my initial misgivings. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Demmett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following up on Alderman Plufka's critique, in order to avoid this, was there any discussion about constructing permanent storage?
Right, that would be one solution we have talked about, is if you would actually build a storage shed or structure. And there is excess parking there, so I would think that there would be room to place one there. Not quite sure about the dimensions, but that would be one solution.
So that way we avoid the whole concern about any type of precedent that is being set by approving this. It's a workaround of the temporary nature as well.
Any further discussion? Alderman Lockmiller?
Lisa, and the new ordinance, it stipulates that they should try to put it behind the building if possible. Otherwise, if it's in the public right-of-way, the view of the public right-of-way, it has to be screened. What does screening mean?
So it says in one of the parameters that they shall be located and/or screened in a manner that minimizes their visibility from all public rights of way. So I don't know that it's implied necessarily that all storage containers would have to be screened. The exception to that was when we discussed Chapter 500 under the building regulations, all of them used for construction reasons have to be screened.
Okay.
Privacy fencing, or not privacy fencing, but the mesh fence.
Right.
So that again, it says and/or, so it wouldn't necessarily imply that it has to be screened.
And getting back to the definition of temporary, in the definition of special use, temporary seems to be tied to an event. They need these trailers for a special event. Am I reading that right? Is that trailers or containers, it's only temporary because something is being done on a short period of time and they need them?
I would agree with that.
Okay. Thank you.
I
Alderman
have one other question, actually,
Sure.
brought up by Alderman Dimmitt's comment. If we're talking about more permanent structures, what setbacks are we talking about?
They would be considered accessory structures, so it's a little more liberal than just your setbacks for primary structures. I would have to check. Plus also, I would say that since it is planned development, it probably would have to go through as an amendment to the site plan. The other thing to keep in mind too is that that could be another process to take if this was really more permanent instead of temporary, because the planned development overlay district does allow by conditional use permit display and storage of outdoor merchandise, equipment, and vehicles. So that might be a way, whether it's an accessory structure or whether these storage containers, it could possibly come under as a site plan amendment.
Thank you.
Alderman Leahy?
Thank you, Your Honor. I've had the pleasure of meeting with the applicant and discussed it with it, and I did share my comments and the discussion with the board members so that you all at least knew where we were headed. Forgive me for being in the minority and voting against the new ordinance that we put in place. But basically, you have an applicant who is leasing a facility that you're proposing maybe build additional structure on property that he doesn't own. That's gonna be something that he and his tenant, his landlord has to work out through. So I don't think that that's gonna happen in an immediate arrangement. He's making an application per our code that says, I have a need because my business is doing so well and I'd like additional storage, and this is one way of accomplishing it. And your code does allow him to go this route. Unfortunately, we did discuss it in our meeting that prior history with other facilities in the city of Brentwood have led to some bad taste in people's mouths as to the attractiveness of the storage containers, the usage, seasonal floating and all of this. And the applicant was very honest and would like to find a good way to make this work for everybody to go after. But he's limited to, I gotta work within your code. Your code doesn't prevent him. 48 months, yeah, doesn't sound temporary, but there's nothing that tells me that I can't give him a 48-month permission. We also did raise the discussion, and Lisa, I'll ask it in public session. One suggestion is if the storage containers aren't really that attractive and that desirable, is he correct in his assumption that if he had semi-trailers that were allowed to be parked in the back of his lot, that he could use those as storage containers?
So we've discussed that as well, and I have spotted trailers back there, but they actually have been still hitched to a vehicle and could move at any
Okay.
time. But to have just a trailer set back there that's not attached to a vehicle, this special use ordinance is supposed to cover both of that, as well as the supplemental regulations. It's for temporary storage containers and trailers.
So that avenue is not available.
My determination would be, or interpretation would be no.
Okay, good, because we weren't sure, and thus we were looking for an answer on that one. The dilemma that we have is a prior applicant that had come to us and left the city trying to work with him for over a number of years, and it finally fell apart. You have the Bed Bath and Beyond group that comes in and asks, and we did work with them to drop them from 240 down to 160 days usage of their special containers to work with. I'm not pleased with the request, but under the code, I think this board should take a look at either redefining its codes and fixing it down the road. But at this point, I'd ask you to really seriously consider the applicant's request and potentially grant him permission to work with. Thank you, Your Honor.
Alderman Plufka.
Thank you. To say that Bed Bath & Beyond's application is somewhat comparable to this, I think stretches the limits of logic. 120 days, 200 days is not 4 years. The contemplation of this, everything about it speaks to the idea that this is going to be permanent. And I don't think that rises to the level that we need to redo an ordinance that we just did. I think this stretches the very limits of what this ordinance was intended to get at. I don't really understand why we're not seeing at least a picture or provided some information about the material that's being used to build this thing, that we're not allowed to see or not being allowed to know what the building material is. It's going to be there for 4 years. And we're supposed to approve this without knowing anything about what it looks like, what color it is, what material it's made out of. I think on a very basic level, that makes it difficult to say yes to this. Thank you.
Alderwoman Sims.
I agree that I think 4 years is not temporary, just because there might not be a date certain or a time period certain baked into the code, doesn't mean we abandon our common understanding of what temporary is. I mean, my first house lease was shorter than that. So, I mean, and I'm not trying to be cheeky, I think by the nature of, I mean, surely, yes, okay, we don't have a fixed time, but we have to have a common at least some, threshold of what temporary is. I don't think 4 years is, meets that test. So I'm, as submitted, I think 4 years is too long, included with, what Alderman Plufka's comments were about not having enough information about what the structure's gonna look like. So, that's my thought.
Thank you. Alderman Leahy?
Your Honor, if I may help lead the board a little bit, I'd like to offer an amendment to this application. The applicant is here this evening.
The amendment would be to the motion.
Yes,
So, yeah.
to the motion. Let's address Mr. Plefka's concern. The storage containers would be the standard shipping cargo metal containers. Freshly painted is in our discussion that we had with the applicant, so that they would look at least aesthetically pleasing. If the board would like, we can add that into the terms so that at least we're talking metal. We did not ask Bed Bath & Beyond when they came to us and asked for the 11 containers. We all worked with the impression that they were the metal storage containers. As for the 48 months, I'll ask the board in its consideration, would you approve a 12-month with the potential of renewals as acceptable to work with? And if that is, you've got an applicant that's telling you he has a space problem and that he's looking to do this, and it's not just gonna be an instantaneous solution. He is looking long-term, so he's honestly bringing it to your attention. He's looking at 48 months, but they are willing to, if the board would seriously open its consideration, we'll do a 12-month lease to use it with the intent that they'll come back at 11 months and say, would you renew them? The dilemma that you have is 11 months down the road, he's still running a very viable business. Are you gonna tell him at the 12th month, I'm sorry, they gotta be picked up and taken away, that you may actually hurt his business and his facility in what he's doing in the city of Brentwood? So I think by asking you for the 48 months, he's being very open and honest with you. I'm trying to run a very valid business, and this is a long-term solution for his arrangement, because he doesn't have the ability to build onto a building he's leasing to right now. This would be a quicker way to do it. So I'd ask you to consider that avenue. May I ask the applicant, Sean, would you be
No.
Okay, can't
No.
go there, okay. Then I will make the motion if
Yeah,
it
I'm
makes
gonna
it
go ahead-
palatable to
I'm
the
gonna go ahead and
board.
try to restate your motion. You tell me if I get it wrong. How
Motion
about
is
that?
to define that the containers are the metal shipping containers, and that a potential, instead of 48 months, to go to 12 months with the boards looking to renewal.
Okay. Can I take a crack at it?
Yes, sir, you may.
Because I heard a couple other things, and I think
Go ahead.
you're on the right track. So the motion is to add a condition to the special use permit that the containers be made of metal, that they be freshly painted, and that they be aesthetically pleasing as negotiated with staff.
Okay,
And that the term of the special use permit be reduced to 12 months from the 48 that's been requested.
with renewal.
I don't know that we need to state that necessarily, because he can always come back and, it expires in 12 months unless it's renewed, I mean.
Understand, sir.
So, that's the motion, is there a second?
Okay,
All right, the motion will die for lack of a second.
thank you.
Your Honor, I have a question.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
One of the things that bothers me about this is that this has residential areas that are butting up to this. For the residents to look at a parking area is one thing, to look at containers is something else. Has there been any effort to contact those residential owners in the area to talk to them about this?
Staff has not initiated that.
Yeah, that's not something we typically, I mean,
You wouldn't do.
well, the property owner might, or the applicant might, but we wouldn't.
Thank you.
Alderman Leahy?
In addressing Mrs. O'Neill's question, in our discussion, that came up as part of an opportunity that the business would consider if the board would look favorably for residential input. They would not be opposed to reaching out. There are approximately 8 or 9 residents that border the south side and the west side that come around the corner to work with. The dilemma that we had in that discussion was, you have down here at RPM butting up to residential, and we never made that a requirement to them when they had their storage containers to work with. It would be nice to have some feedback, but there's nothing in your code that requires that they do this, but they are willing to consider doing it if it would help persuade the board to look favorably on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to call the question.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we call the question. All in favor of calling the question, say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Great. Roll call, please.
Alderman Demmett,
No.
Alderman Leahy,
Yes?
Alderman Lockmiller,
No.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
No.
Alderman Plufka,
No.
Alderwoman Sims,
No.
Alderman Weige.
No.
All right. I just want to say this, and, I can certainly understand why the board has taken the action it's taken tonight, and I would even say that I'm somewhat in agreement with it. But let me also say this. I think, the refined room is exactly the kind of business that we need on Brentwood Boulevard, and it's exactly the kind of business that we want for our Manchester renewal area. It's a wonderful, wonderful addition to our community and has been for the last 5 years. I think it behooves us, and I intend to ask our city administrator and our director of planning and development to work with the owner of that building, with the applicant, to see if we can't find a way, short of putting storage containers in the parking lot, which obviously is not something the board wants to see happen, to get additional space for them. And I don't know what we can do in that regard, but, I certainly, am willing to meet with anybody I've got to meet with or talk to anybody I've got to talk to if we can do something to help. Because, again, while I understand that this is a tough issue and all of that, I think that we need to, having quality businesses like that in our community is something we have to work to keep. And whatever we need to do to make that happen, we need to get out there and do the work to make it happen. So, you have my pledge, sir, that whatever I can do to help you out, simply talk to Lisa, say the word, and we'll do what we can. Ways and Means Committee, Alderman Demmett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our very next meeting will be this Thursday at 6 o'clock in this room, where we will continue the budget discussion.
Budget discussion. Fun. Mr. City Attorney.
No reports.
And Madam City Administrator.
None. Thank you.
Madam Excise Commissioner.
No report.
What, Brentwood Day is coming up and no liquor licenses?
None that I got.
All right. Just talking about a quiet Brentwood Day celebration.
No, there's been 4.
Oh, okay, we've already got them, all right. I just want to make sure, Brentwood Days without beer, that's going to be weird. Madam Library Liaison.
Yes, just a couple items of interest. The Eclipse party for the rec center was great fun, but some of the glasses came from the library. They passed out 650 glasses, got 600 more from the Astronomical Society. And they said it was the busiest week ever. Normally, they field 100 phone calls a week. They had 550 phone calls that week. And they had their own party here, so it's busy. Their statistics for the last 3 months also show that the most heavily used event is a baby toddler story time with adults, where they are trying to pack between 35 and 40 individuals into the spaces downstairs. It's not working well. They are busy. There are lots of young babies and toddlers in Brentwood.
I'm not giving up my spot.
So, so there really is a need for more space. And in light of that, tomorrow the subcommittee of the library board is meeting with the architect and for the school district to look into building a new library as an adjunct to a new elementary school. More to come.
All right, thank you. Under the Municipal League, the Missouri Municipal League will be having their annual conference next weekend at Tantera in Lake of the Ozarks. I actually am going to be going because our very own city engineer, Dan Gummersheimer, will be receiving an innovation award for his idea to do the foam jacking on the sidewalks. That's become quite popular, and he's going to be quite appropriately recognized for that idea. So I'm going to take part in that. I'm also going, yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to being there on Tuesday night when he receives that award, or Tuesday afternoon. I also intend to meet with the mayors of Richmond Heights, Clayton, and Maplewood, and speak more about the Central Fire Command issues and some of that other stuff. So if you have any thoughts on those matters before I head down there on Sunday next, feel free to ring me up and share your views. Any announcements? Alderman Dimmitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ward 1 will not have the September meeting for September the 12th, but we will keep the October date.
Okay, no Ward 1 in September, but extra Ward 1 in October. Alderman Leahy.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Ward 3 monthly meeting for September will be Tuesday night, September the 28th, 7 o'clock here in the council chambers. And we extend the invitation to anyone who would like to come up and informally discuss what's going on in Brentwood with their alderman. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any further announcements? I have two, actually. So, for those of you who aren't aware, the Board of Aldermen last, maybe it was 2 meetings ago, changed the name of Brentwood Days back to Brentwood Days. So on the 15th, 16th of September, we will be having our annual Brentwood Days celebration. If I'm not mistaken, there will be a parade on Saturday. There will be a party on Friday to kick things off, and then there'll be an all-day festival on Saturday following the parade at noon. So my children call it the funnest day of the year. Or the funnest days of the year, and I encourage everybody to come on down. Right now, the weather looks outstanding. It looks like it's going to be like today for the entire weekend, so that's fantastic. The second thing is update on the crossing guard situation. So while we were sitting here, our city administrator sent me a text, the wonders of technology. Apparently, it was the school district who decided that the afternoon crossing guard was not necessary and asked us to stand down on that guard. So I would ask you to take your concern to Dr. Brian Lane, who is our new superintendent, and make it clear to him that you think that perhaps that was a little hastily done. And I can tell you that if they're willing to pay, we're willing to hire and procure the people. So, but again, that was done that has always been done at their request. It's driven by the school board, so I think that's the place to go with that one. So, any further announcements? Do we have any new business? I think we do. All right, item number 18 on the agenda, hearing of any matter of public event interest upon the request of any person present. If you'd like to come forward and address the board, 3 minutes.
Karen Meyer, 8726 Pine Avenue. In listening to the discussion regarding the temporary storage containers, I was wondering if there is any type of nearby Brentwood rental property that would serve as a warehouse for this company rather than bringing in containers.
Good. Anyone else care to come forward and address the board? Okay, aldermanic response, I'll go ahead and take that one. My understanding from talking to Lisa is that the refined room is already using some temporary storage down the street, but it's still a problem to have to go down the street to replace items and so forth, and so on. There's really simply no substitute for on-site storage, and having a business myself, which carries a fair amount of inventory, I can completely understand that. And you know, so it's a great idea, but I think from a practical standpoint, the business really needs to find some way to put more inventory on site. Any other aldermanic response? Seeing none. I would entertain a motion to go into a closed session.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, so the motion is to go into closed section pursuant to RSMO 610-21-1, that's legal, and 610-21-2, which is real estate.
And adjourn from that meeting?
And
Carmen?
adjourn from that meeting, thank you, sir. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Dimmitt,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Yes.
Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yep. All right, we are now officially in closed session. Why don't we reconvene? Do you want, I think we're gonna have enough people, we should go upstairs. Yeah, we'll reconvene upstairs in 7 minutes' time at 8:15.
Dan, is it set up?
For those of you in the audience, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.